2.
Good morning, afternoon, evening, everybody. This is Gunner Eos, and we are bringing you another episode of the Logical Gamers podcast. I am once again here with Mr. Blanka Kong, Mr. Esoteric, and Mr. HadoWolf. And today's episode is going to be not, I'm not going to start off. There's no flame. You like what you like. This is just an interesting topic came up in our personal group chats when the recent Shin Megami Tensei 5 released on the Nintendo Switch. And me and Wolf are big RPG players, and we play the Shin Megami and the Persona series pretty regularly. And we were discussing recent reviews that we read about the game, where one review in particular basically praised SMT for being a good game, while at the same time bashing SMT because it wasn't like Persona. And that just sparked the conversation that we're bringing to you today. So the topic is going to be about Persona, SMT, how they're the same, how they're different, and basically our overall thoughts about the franchises and how they coexist with each other. So just to put it out there, both Blanka Kong and Esoteric haven't played the Persona or the Shin Megami series to any degree. Blanka Kong hasn't played it at all, and Esoteric has played Persona briefly. If I'm understanding that correctly, you've dabbled in the Persona games.
Well, no, I actually own them but haven't really played them. So I don't really know much about it except for like who created it and it being an RPG. And
Right.
yeah.
Okay. Cool. So we have two basically people who know nothing, have no dog in the race, and we have me and Wolf who've played Persona respectively and Shin Megami respectively. So now that disclaimer and intro is out the way, we'll get into the meat and potatoes of the conversation. So to start it off, I'm a big SMT fan. I've played most of them. 5 obviously being the latest one I've played. I've recently beaten the game or gotten one of the endings, which we'll get into that at some point. And I've also played Persona. I've played pretty much Persona ever since 3. I never had the opportunity to play 1 and 2, but I've played 3, 4, and 5. Both the 3 Fez, P4, P4 Golden, P5 and P5 Royal, the kind of upgraded versions of each one. And having played both, my favorite one, hands down, is the mainline Shin Megami Tensei franchise, or how we'll relate to it from now on, SMT. So, reasons why I like SMT as opposed to Persona. Like I said, I'm a big RPG guy. I like theory crafting. I like building my team from scratch. I like, finding different combinations that work with each other, so on and so on. SMT has always given me that in spades. And what I mean by that is that the sole focus, for the most part, on SMT is the team building and the grinding. It's a grind fest. Like, you're always grinding demons, either for fusions or to recruit demons. You're grinding levels because maybe a boss just handed you your ass and you have to grind because you got to beat this boss. It's a story boss. You got to get through it. Now, Persona series also has that, but Persona has another equally, or in my opinion, more important gameplay mechanic in the slice of life aspect of the game. And from me playing P3 and onwards, I just that grated on me. That grated on me really hard because I just wanted to get back into the dungeoning. I wanted to get back into the grinding. I wanted to get back into the team building. I wanted to, pour over the fusion book and say, who am I going to fuse? Who am I going to make my team better? And there are specific points in Persona where you can't do that. Everybody makes fun of Morgana, a character in the Persona 5 series, because he literally does not allow you to leave your house at certain points of the game. You have to go to sleep because you have to, because you have finals in the morning because you're a high school student in that game usually. I didn't like that. I wanted to go to the dungeon. I didn't want to go study for midterms. But in Persona, you have to do that because it's an integral part of the game. Whereas in SMT, you're dungeon grinding from beginning to pretty much end with some story exposition dumps in between. So, not to rant and go too far, that's the major reason why I like SMTs, the SMT series over the Persona series. I respect Persona. I play it. I plan on playing 6 whenever that is announced. But I like SMT because, like I said before, I just want to grind. I don't want to play a slice of life sim. I don't want to play a dating sim, and I can't ignore that aspect because I would literally be denied gameplay aspects in relation to the dungeon. Like, you can't avoid it. You literally cannot, or you are purposely gimping yourself in playing the game. So, we'll go back and forth on points. So, Wolf, I know you played the Persona series more. So, tell us a little bit about your experience with the Persona series, and just tell us why you like it.
Okay. So, uh, Sony series for me is more of it is a grind fest. There are grind fest aspects to it in the very least. The thing is with the Persona series is that it's more there's this so you're timed on everything you do. So you can't just start and say, okay, well, I want to spend this much time doing this one type of gameplay within the game. So you start a mission, or if you once you reach certain story arcs, they'll say, okay, well, you have 3 weeks because it's you're a high schooler in school, and you have to manage the relationship building with NPCs. You have to manage studying for your test to increase your character skills, and then you also have to manage making yourself strong for boss fights that you will eventually have to fight. So you can't really say, okay, well, I'm going to spend all my time leveling up physically the character. The character actually, your character in the Persona series has a multitude of dynamics to him or her, depending on what you choose, what version or persona you're playing. Um, they have a multitude of, or they have different areas that you have to increase. And everything comes back full circle for your character. So, yes, you do have to do midterms, but in that gameplay, when you're doing midterms, for every question that you get, it'll increase your charisma, or it will increase your intelligence, or it'll increase your guts. And when you increase certain um, attitudes or personalities about yourself, then it'll open up more NPCs for you to build relationships with. So why are you building relationships with NPCs? You're building relationship with NPCs because every NPC is going to unlock something on the tarot cards category. So Persona uses tarot cards as categories for the monsters that you use, or the personas, quote unquote, that you and your party summons to fight. So, for example, the main healer of any Persona game is typically of the Lovers class or the Lovers tarot card. You are usually of the Fool's tarot. The main character is usually of the Fool's tarot card. There you have Hierophant, you have um, Chariot, and Temperance, and so forth and so forth. So if you ever look at tarot cards, those are what your monsters are categorized into.
Right.
So you build these relationships with them to unlock more tarot cards, which would unlock monsters of that class for you to use, fuse, and build. And at the same time, it also makes your party stronger. So if you build a relationship with one party member, they can be to a point where they'll protect you from a move that will cause a game over. Because if your character dies, it's game over no matter what. You can have the other party members can be nice and healthy, but if the main character dies, for this sake, let's use Joker, who is the main character of Persona 5. If Joker dies, it's game over. So me building relationship with my party members allows, say, the monster's going to hit Joker, he's about to die. A party member will actually they'll eat that blow for him, which allows you to continue the gameplay. So the purpose of Persona, which is what I love, I'm the type of person where I can talk a lot or I can not talk at all. But either way, no matter what I'm doing, I'm always observing people's personalities, or I'm always observing how they move. I'm always observing on the things they say. I just find that to be a very interesting, weird habit that I have, because I always find that either people are going to live up to what they say, or they're going to show that, their true personality of whether they're a hypocrite or whether they're an honest person or whether, they're a liar and so forth. Persona series puts players who's actually paying attention to the story. They put it in a situation where you really find out that people are really not as perfect as they would try to seem. And I'll give an example, right? So in Persona 4, there is two female characters who are, at least the game introduces them as best friends or very close friends. They're very polar opposites of each other. One is she's very girly, she's very feminine, she's beautiful. And within the video game, all the other boys in the school like her. And then the other one is very rough. She's a tomboy. She watches karate movies and practices them. Um, a lot of guys are intimidated by her. So she doesn't get that much male attention. But as you play the game and you start to build relationship with these two, it gets to a point where you start to realize that they're friends, but they're jealous of each other. And that's where their darkness comes into play for the Persona storyline. So the tomboy is jealous of the feminine girl because of her friend, because she gets all the male attention. And the tom girl doesn't feel like a female, so she lashes out as being more of a boyish or having a more masculine attitude. Whereas the feminine one is jealous of the tomboy one because she feels like that girl has the guts to say what's on her mind, to rebuttal what people say, to live on her own standards. So they were friends, but they secretly hate each other. They secretly were jealous of each other. They secretly wanted to replace each other. So a lot of times we as people, we're put up this facade that we are perfect, or we are giving out that personality that we want everybody to accept. But in actuality, are we really showing who we really are? Are we really expressing who we really are? And that's what the Persona games, at least for the storyline, that's what the Persona games really they push that. They push the player to realize, like, hey, look, you may be playing a video game, but this is a psychological warfare you're going through for these many hours that you're playing. It's a mind fuck. It
Right.
really is it is a mind fuck.
No,
You
it
know,
is.
it's so interesting to see how in a span of 5 games you can bring out so many dynamics of the human psyche, because the characters in Persona 4 were people who was trying to hide their true nature, whereas the characters of Persona 5 was people who was more accepting of their nature and were more willing to force their true natures amongst the public.
Right.
So
Yes.
it's just like a whole nother dynamic on the human mind. And that's why I love the Persona series so much, because you start to take that and then you you apply it to your real life. Like, I don't know if I don't want to piss anybody off, or I don't know if anybody do follow him, but I listen to a lot of Jordan Peterson stuff. And there's one specific video he put out on YouTube, and in that 11 minutes that he explained what he thinks of the human psyche was literally Persona 4. It was that whole gameplay. You know, people putting out a facade because they don't want the public to ostracize them for how they really feel, think, or act. You know, so it's the Persona series brings that dynamic. I love that. I love that you're timed, so you have to manage yourself accordingly. I like that I what I do love about both SMT and Persona is that they're dark. They're very dark games.
Yes.
Do not expect that you're going to see rainbows and puppies, because you won't.
Man.
You really won't. But I feel like these two games are on two. They're the same, but they're also very different.
Yes. And Wolf brought up a very good point while he was talking about how he sees, like, he has personal traits in his life outside of a video game, right? He's very sociable. He you know, he can carry out long conversations with people, and he likes to, you know, engage with other people.
Hmm.
I'm the exact opposite, right? I can talk to people, but I choose to keep to myself. And it's interesting that you mentioned that part of yourself, and how basically Persona is a more personal story. It's getting to know people on personal levels and kind of peeling back layers, so to speak, of a person, how they, you know, the face they put up when they're out and about in the public as who they really are when, you know, they're by themselves and the doors are closed.
Right, right.
That is interesting. Um, but for me, as a person who really isn't that interactive with other people, um, that's why I kind of like Shin Megami's storyline, or their basis for storylines, more. Because for those who don't know, and for Kong and Esoteric who aren't familiar with the franchises, SMT's story has more to do with ideologies, belief systems, as opposed to personal stories of individuals. So what I mean by that is that, take the latest game, since we're talking about it, SMT5, you start off as a high schooler student, funny enough, and you're immediately thrust into a world where the creator god, this is where we're going with this, the creator god stole knowledge from all the lesser gods. So what I mean by that is the creator god, you can call him God. They just call him the creator. He stole knowledge from lesser gods, aka he stole the knowledge from Norse gods. He stole knowledge from Egyptian gods. He stole knowledge from Babylonian gods. All these gods in human myth that people worship and believe in, he took their knowledge and hoarded it for himself. So basically, he took their godhood away from them, kept it to himself, and said, I am the only God. You worship no other God but me. Where have we heard that before? Need I say more?
Yeah.
So basically, all the gods that have roamed the earth in the SMT universe have been regulated to demons. That's what the creator gods calls them, because there can't be any other gods but him. So that's why you see Thor, Loki, Zeus, Odin, and so on and so forth called demons. They're not really demons in sort of the Christian mythos of, you know, Lucifer and friends, which Lucifer is in the game, but they're just demons because they can't be God. They're not allowed to be God. And just to give a rundown of the story, when you start the story, the creator god is killed. Lucifer killed God. So now the world is thrown into chaos and everything's up for grabs. It's literally the meme. Lucifer came in, killed God, refused to elaborate, leaves. So now the world is in chaos. because now gods are like, the creator god is dead. It's time for me to shine. So what the Shin Megami series does is it takes these ideologies and belief systems and it applies it to different characters. So this may be spoiler territory. So, if that's not your thing, you might want to mute this part. But there are 3 endings in Shin Megami. One is the law ending, where you as the main character take up the mantle of creator god, and you basically preserve the status quo. You're going to keep it this way. There are no other gods other than me, and you become the main character. You become God, essentially. The second ending is called the chaos ending. That's when you side with characters who don't want a god anymore. You destroy the throne and you say it's a free for all. Have fun. I don't care who dies, I don't care who lives, the strongest survive and they get to become gods. That's an ending you can pick. And then a neutral ending is where you take no sides. You don't go for ultimate good, you don't go for ultimate evil, you just go along your path. So while the Persona series focuses on individual personal stories, Shin Megami focuses on ideologies and belief systems. So it's a grander, overarching storyline that takes itself incredibly serious.
Yeah, you really can't play either one of those games, and if you're thin-skinned, because you are going to feel, if you're overly religious, if you are very one-sided on your point of view on society, um, if you are political, very political, extremely political, these are video games that you really don't want to play.
Right.
In in Persona 5, the premise is really the bosses you fight is really based on the 7 deadly sins. Loosely based on, greed, pride, sloth. I think sloth was the final boss, or the big boss. Um, so where your characters, if you look at their personas, so personas are monsters. In the Persona series, personas are the same monsters that Gunnar is talking about as gods and demons. These very same creatures that he is summoning on his side, or he's battling against in his game, are actually called personas in the Persona series. So what they are monsters that you as the main character envision for what is yourself at that given moment.
Right.
So in Persona 5, the main character is Joker, at least that's his code name. And the persona he summons, the monster he mainly uses, is called Arsene. And Arsene in lore is a rogue thief. And then all the other characters you collect throughout the game are their personas are rogues of some sort, you know, in their own culture. If it was Japan or Egypt, such as, I think in Japan there's a character who's Goemon. I think that's how you pronounce his name,
Yeah,
Goemon.
correct.
Right. He's a rogue samurai. The healer, she was like a rogue kind of like mistress or some type of
Yeah, she was based off like a famous historical French
French
yeah.
woman,
Yeah.
right? You know who? So the persona for Persona 5, your characters were the rogues that was taking up the mantle to fight the deadly sins that we deal
Right.
with every day.
Essentially like the rebels or the historical figures that went against the grain and the established status quo. They were all rebels, whether they were literally rogues and pirates or they were
Hmm.
just like they did not agree with what was the established this is what it is in their
Right.
respective time periods.
Like there, one big thing or one big scene that happened in Persona 5 that really showed how rebellious they were is, so, as teenagers, we think we know everything. We think the world bends to us. We are the center of the universe. That's typically what makes teenagers difficult to deal with. Um, So a lot of the bosses that you fought were adults who would curse you because you're a kid, or who will look down at you, or who will turn their back on you because you're kids. And because of that, they the main characters of the game rebelled even more. And that was a thing that was going on in Persona 5. Also, in a sense, you can even say Persona 5, the first boss was a pedophile. So
Right.
again, you need to have thick skin to play these games. Um, so just keeping in mind that this is just a video game in the end of the day, and this is not like these games are for mature mindsets. They are all, I believe Persona, I believe SMT5 is rated M. I
Yes,
know
it is.
Persona
It's
is
an M
rated
rating.
M. Okay. So if you're listening to this and your 12-year-old is playing either one of those games, that's on your discretion,
Yeah.
not the game companies. I'm just saying. Um, but either way, these are actual things that we do face in society. There are teachers who will hit on high school girls. There are teachers who will hit on high school boys. That is an issue that happened with the first boss in Persona 5. Another boss in Persona 5 was a dude who he was a money launderer. He
Right.
was a
Right.
he was a kingpin. And what did he do? Because kids are innocent and kids are vulnerable, he took kids off the street, he took kids from their homes, and he forced them to sell drugs for him. You know, like this is crazy shit that actually happens in the world. Like this is stuff that really goes on in people's mindsets. And as you play the game, you realize that while these characters and this world is created out of someone's imagination, it's taken from societal issues that we do face. And I think that's why these games should be appreciated more than what really people take it as. Um,
Right. Right. Yeah, because it's very easy to get lost in the anime aesthetic of the game. Because hell, literally Persona, they have an anime. You can watch kind of the main story arc for P5 if you wanted to. It's really easy to get lost in that, and if that's why you play Persona, cool. If you play it because it's cool anime characters doing cool anime things, cool. That's fine for you. Enjoy it. Enjoy that the way you enjoy it. Have fun. But as Wolf said, there is deeper. There's a deepness to the Persona games in terms of, again, personal stories. Like you have teachers abusing power. You have, adults getting people purposefully into debt so they can keep them as essentially um, a form of slavery.
yep,
Hell, the final boss is literally using the shadow
political
world
power.
for political power. He wants to be prime
Mhm.
minister of Japan, and he will kill using this newfound shadow world that he discovers as you go through the course of the game to kill any political rivals that get in his way or people that find out what he's doing, and then eventually his crosshairs go on your team because you're the only ones capable of fighting against him. So
Mhm.
you know it has that, and I really like that. And SMT has kind of the same thing. It's just, again, on a grander scale. It makes you think about, well, if I was in a world, do we really need to worship one god? Like, what makes that god more important than any other god? And this is shit that you start thinking about outside of a video game. Like, how would a world be if you know the gods that used to exist in folklore still exist, and we didn't have the central religions to tell us that no, those gods are actually demons. You don't worship them because there's only one god and he's the god you worship. SMT kind of makes you think about that stuff in the terms of a anime style video game. So like, while Wolf likes the personal story aspect of it, I just love the overarching, like, philosophical and sociological, like, dump that SMT gives you. But
So let's go on to the gameplay aspect now.
yes,
So
yes.
with the Persona series, actually they Persona 1, 2, and 3, I believe 1 and 2 was also the same way. You only could control your main character. You couldn't control your teammates. You had to rely on the AI to make the best possible decision for you. In Persona
Yes.
4 and 5, they changed that to where you can control your whole team. Persona 3 got that with a remake. So here's the thing. I'm gonna give it to SMT on that, where SMT, because you can fuse your demons, at least SMT 5, because you can fuse your demons and build your demons the way you kind of want to, you can create a healer of your liking. You can create a tank of your liking. You can create a DPS character of your liking. You pretty much have that free flow form. Persona, or at least in Persona 5, you could kind of do that, but it would all rely on you constantly switching your monsters on your main character. But at the same time, because you have an actual team, you have your dedicated healer, you have your dedicated tank, you have your dedicated DPS, and then because of that, these characters fall into that role where they are stuck in that archetype. So my healer cannot dish the damage that my DPS can because from the ground up, she is designed as a healer. Whereas in, say, SMT5, you, if you're really good and you know what you're doing, you could make Thor, who have an extremely high attack stat, have a healing move, which he can heal your team with. Or you can just go straight tank with him, or you can go straight strength, DPS with him. It's really up to how you want to mold that demon. I don't get that with Persona 5. These characters are pretty much straightforward. Anna's a healer. She will heal. She can do little fire damage. That's nice, but she's not going to dish out damage as another character who was lightning based. So now you run into this issue. What if you run
Right.
into a mob of monsters who are immune to electric attacks? So now your lightning DPS guy, because he's the one with the highest attack stat, he can't really do much against those enemies because they are going to reflect his element or they're going to be immune to his element. So now you have to find a different element to fight these guys. And that's why one character in Persona 5 became the broken character because she didn't have an element. Nothing resisted her. So because nothing resisted her and she had a decent attack stat, she automatically broke the mold of what the other characters had to deal with, and that automatically pushed her ahead of the game, which creates, for me, it creates an imbalance because now I have her. I'm not gonna drop her. I'd be an idiot to, but then all my other characters get neglected
Right.
in the long run of it. So I don't really get that full, you know, feeling of how each character work with each other and how they communicate with each other and what kind of teams I can build. Whereas Gunner gets that in SMT.
Yes. Exactly as Wolf says. With SMT, you, especially 5, with the whole new essence system that they added, you can literally take a demon and it could be, oh, I really like Thor. He's cool. I like him. And you can use the essences to basically take moves from other demons and apply them to Thor. And there's also another system that I really like in SMT called the it's basically um not essences, but it's basically specializations, which originated in Shin Megami SMT 4. Basically what that means is that if you look at the top of your demons and your main character, you see that they have plus or minus in certain elements and support and status inflicting skills. Basically means that they're, for example, Thor is really good at thunder, but he's really bad at fire. So that basically kind of tells you, okay, this is where Thor leads. The good thing about that is that there are items you can get in the game to increase those things. So if Thor is neutral in ice and you really like Thor and you want him to be good at ice, you can bump his ice capacity, his ice skill capacity to level 9, and suddenly ice skills do not drain his entire mana pool. And you can do that with any demon you want. So you can hyper specialize or hyper diversify. And that also extends to your main character. Your main character is a blank slate in every sense of the word, from his name to how you want to play him. You can use the same essences to basically give him his entire move set. He gets nothing when he levels. The only thing he gets when he levels are stat increases. And even then, you're allowed 1 point every level to pump into any stat you want. So my main character, for example, I made him a physical attacker. That's his job. He's unga bunga, me hit thing real hard. So what I did was every time he levels, I would use that free strength, that point, and pump it into strength. And I would give him moves that are strength based. Now, later on down the line, I started specializing him more. So as Wolf knows, and anybody who's played SMT or a Persona game, Almighty is the equivalent of non-elemental damage. So
Mhm.
if an enemy is resistant to fire, it's in both SMT and Persona. If something blocks an element, it's really bad for you. In Persona, it basically, and Persona and SMT, it nullifies your turns. So if an enemy blocks fire, that's it. You lose your turns and it goes to the enemy turn. And
Yeah.
if they crit or if they hit you with a weakness, they get an extra turn. They do it again, they get an extra turn. And basically, they can get nigh infinite turns and wipe out your entire party instantly. The good thing
Yeah.
is, you can do that as well. But what Almighty does is nobody resists Almighty. It's non-elemental magic. So what I did for my main character is I switched him from physical to physical Almighty. So now when he hits something, regardless if it resists physical, whether it blocks physical, he's going to hit you. And that's what I love about Persona, because SMT, because I would read different people and they had their main characters become full supports. So they would max out support skills, give them the best support magic available, and they would just be support and heal bots. I've seen main characters that are tanks. I've seen main characters that are high DPS magic. I've seen main characters that specialize in every element from fire, ice, wind, dark, and light. Hyper specializations. And as an RPG nut, that shit turns me on, because I just want to take this character and mold him from nothing into a hyper specialized killing machine or buffing machine. And
Yeah.
Persona, you can do that, but it's like Wolf said, you can only do so much, and you can only do it the main character, and it's only by having different personas.
Right. Which
Everyone
means
else,
you're gonna spend time switching out.
right?
So
Because everybody in
you're
the
gonna
team is locked to a specific persona.
and they're locked to a specific play style.
Yeah.
So
So
it really is. You have more. Your team in Persona is bigger than your. Well, no, because it's 4-4.
it's 4-4, but
Um,
it's you're the only human character, I guess, in
yeah,
SMT.
in SMT 5 in Persona, there are other humans, but your overall cast is about 9 of them. So you use 4 at a time. So you have to build around that 4. And I guess another argument would be, well, you're supposed to be leveling up all those characters equally so that you can switch them out here and there, which Persona does give you that option
Right.
eventually. So if you run into an enemy that is a whole bunch of enemies that are immune to lightning, and you have the lightning dude on your team, ideally you burn his turn to switch out for somebody else because he's no longer good in that fight. But my thing is with that is that it cuts out a step for me to progress in the fight. Where in SMT 5, I can just have that character that has all elements Like in Pokemon, we use the word sweepers, right? So like Blanka Kong knows what a sweeper is. It's a Pokemon that typically has high physical attack or high special attack, but can hit multiple types of Pokemon in any given scenario. So they'll have a fire move, they'll have an electric move, they'll have an ice move to hit a wide amount of elements. You can do that in Persona in SMT5, and you don't ever have to switch out your guy. And SMT5 does give you the option to switch your demons.
Oh yeah.
Where but in Persona, you don't have that ability. So you have to know who you're really going to invest into before you even start really getting serious. So you really find yourself spending a lot of time more focal on your main character than necessarily all the other characters, because at that point you can consider them as fodder. You can consider them as they're just there as meat shields for you for you to be the one to actually be fighting those enemies, because you are the only one that's moldable. Um, so I definitely see that. I love that about SMT5. I look forward because I'm building my character in SMT5 as a bruiser. So a bruiser in games like these are usually someone with high physical attack that can take a lot of hits.
Okay.
Right. So I'm building him more as a bruiser. So he has a lot of HP. He has decent attack, which means I'll deal my damage, but an enemy isn't going to KO me as easily. Because much like in Persona, in SMT5, if my main character dies and I have 3 healthy demons, it's game over regardless.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm not going to go with my normal glass cannon approach with video games and just have extremely high attack and let everything explode. Yes, that is a tactic. Kill them before you get killed. But at the same time, I wanna enjoy my battles as well. Um, or at least that's how I'm going to enjoy my battles. Where
And that's what I love, that like you have the ability to to build and create your main character that way, and you can have a completely different experience with boss fights than I do, because I could have
yeah,
struggled with a particular boss while you were like, it wasn't that bad for me, and I love that.
yeah, I definitely do see. It's making me look forward to it a lot. One thing that I do say when comparing Persona 5 to SMT, anyways, gameplay wise, is where I'm going to give it to Persona 5 is the fact that you get a break from the battles, right?
Okay.
So the reason why I say I actually appreciate that is because battles can be or fights in Persona games can be very overwhelming. You can be fine in one fight, and then you run into another enemy and they just fuck your whole day up.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's it, right? And unlike SMT5, you don't get to save as often as you do in Persona in SMT5. In Persona, you have save points. So if you get a game over at that save point, that's it. Erased data. That's it. You're done. Where SMT5, the save points are so frequent, and because it's open world, there's been plenty of times where a monster is chasing me and I go hide in the corner in SMT5, and the monster will just go back to its spawn spot.
Yeah,
But in
I've been in battles where I've gotten my ass kicked and I barely walked away from it. And I'm like, all right, back to the save point. Just
Yeah, but
you know,
now you have to run back to the save point, which automatically puts you in a situation where you can get aggroed by other monsters on your way back. If Because you can only teleport once you can only go to certain spawn spots at the save point. So everything else you have to run. Whereas in Persona 5, it takes you out of that element for a little bit so that you can miss it, so that when you get back into it, you have shit to do. You appreciated it, right? It's like, all right, if
right.
you have a significant other and you're with the significant other 24/7 every day of the week, all day, never taking a break, you're gonna get tired of that person real quick. But if you take time for yourself and you remove yourself from that relationship, you start to appreciate your significant other more, especially when you get back with them because you spent time away from them. So that's how I look at it, where everything in Persona, they take you away from one aspect so that when you go back to it, there's a sense of appreciation for it. Whether it's the slice of life aspect or whether it's the battle aspect, the game evenly divides up your responsibilities. So you don't get bored of just doing one thing over the other. So I definitely love that about Persona 5, or the Persona games, but Persona 5 did that extremely well. And again, everything goes back full circle. Like I mentioned before we started the podcast, I said, like a lot of things that some video games do, as long as it's going back to the core gameplay, for me, that's good game design. So, yes, the 2 hours that I'm spending outside of battle, building relationships, it's going back to the core aspect of being able to have proper assistance or to have quality of life things happening for you as you go through the game because you took the time to build relationships. On the flip side of it, your tests or you going to school and answering the questions correctly is building up your aspect, your character aspect, so that you can be more efficient at talking to others to then create better personas for yourself. So everything comes back full circle where it's like, okay, well, nothing you do in the game is wasted at any given time. There's absolutely nothing in the game that you do is wasted.
Hmm.
So if you appreciate the time that you have to put in for each aspect, you will you'll start building an OP character for yourself, and you don't even realize that you're doing it because you just understand that these are things that have to get done in the game. So it's both games are complex in their own way. Both games, they have a lot of similarities, but they are also very different. And I think a lot of reviewers and close-minded people need to stop seeing Shin Megami Tensei as a worse persona. On the flip side, stop seeing Persona as a baby, as the baby or the man child to Shin Megami. They're games that have similar elements, but they are respectively very different perspectives.
Right.
That makes them very different games. And if you have an open mind and you're thick skinned, you can play both games, understand that they're both coming from different ideals, and still love the both of them equally. So my overall thought of this is that instead of trying to compare the two games and looking for something to criticize, how about you just open your mind and realize that it's Shin Megami Tensei number 5 and it's Persona or Shin Megami Tensei Persona number 5. Two very different games with just similar aspects to them in terms of moves or enemies, or maybe the art style is somewhat similar. Not even the art style
Not
of
even. Yeah, I was
the
gonna
two
say.
games are the same. Yeah, they're not the same. Persona games are very flashy. They're extremely flashy because they're very team based. Um, Whereas the Shin Megami Tensei 5, I've seen some moves that this character gets, that enemies get, or your characters get in Shin Megami Tensei 5. And it's like, yo, that's some real badass shit. That's like,
Yeah,
yo, this is epic. This
yeah.
is straight out of a Naruto or Dragon Ball Z scene,
Some of
right?
the moves you do for the main character anyway. If you give him those essences, they're like, whoa, this is anime as fuck.
And but like I said, I think people at this point, I don't like telling people what to do, but to save yourself from developing a very pessimistic, closed-minded view of these two games, stop listening to game reviewers. Play the game. If
Yeah.
you feel like you like Persona, so you want to give Shin Megami a chance, do that. Don't let some dude say, "Oh well, Shin Megami Tensei did this correctly, but or had good music, but the music wasn't as good as Persona 5." Like,
Oh
who
my
gives a
God.
fuck?
Yeah.
Music
Yeah.
is mute. Like, okay, like the music matches both games. The music matches what the game is trying to convey to the player, and that should be your only concern. Why should they be J-pop in Shin Megami Tensei when Shin Megami Tensei is about a post-apocalyptic world? That doesn't really make sense. I mean, can any of you imagine listening to J-pop and the world ended? Like, I can't. I really can't. Like I can't see myself. I'm strolling through the desert with ruined cities, and I'm freaking listening to NSYNC or Backstreet Boys. Like I, I can't see myself doing that. It just doesn't make sense for the scenario.
Right. It wouldn't
So
fit. Yeah.
it doesn't fit. Um. So again, like there's a lot of unfair comparisons. Persona has, I think, 4 years or 5 years ahead of Shin Megami Tensei 5. So Persona has the DLC. It has the loyalty of people who played the game. It has Strikers as a spin-off to help push the story. It has a remake. Like Shin Megami Tensei may not get all of that, but respectively speaking, it's a very powerful, unique, and worth a try type video game, even if you're not used to that kind of RPG.
Right.
That's my take on it.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm just gonna close it off because we kind of went through the mythos of the game, the story, the combat, their similarities and their differences. So yeah, just my closing thoughts are, they're gonna kind of mirror Wolf's. Like at this point, SMT, if you imagine on a road, if you're imagining you're on a road, in the beginning it was just SMT and Persona kind of walking side by side. They were really similar in turn. The only difference was their storylines. I'm talking about SMT 1 and 2 compared to Persona 1 and 2. But when 3 came out, that's when the road split and Persona started going down its own road, and then SMT went down its own road with 4. So at this point, SMT and Persona might share the same things, as in they share the same magic, they share the same demons or personas, same thing, same difference. But at this point they are two different games, and I'm happy for that because much like other games, you have your fans on this side who like this iteration, so they'll walk down that road, and they have fans that like this game, so they'll walk down that road. No fan is better than the other, no game is better than the other, because at this point, they're two separate entities that share the same base DNA. And I love that because that just means more games of that ilk for me to play, because now that I've beaten SMT5, I'll go after other endings, but I'm on the lookout for when they drop Persona 6. And I'm going to play Persona 6 even though I personally enjoy 5 more. I respect and like the Persona series enough that I'm anticipating 6, and I'm looking forward to that game. So, just to piggyback off of Wolf and to wrap this up, I agree. Like most games, like every game, do not base your entire purpose, your don't make your decision based on what IGN, GameSpot, or anybody else says. Like, be smart, do your research, g- you know, v- make your research extensive. Go to different people, go to some small name reviewers, big name reviewers, and just try to stay away from direct comparisons, because it's not fair. It's not fair when we do it to the Final Fantasy series. It's not fair when we do it to Fire Emblem. It's not fair. They might have the same title and the same, you know, core similarities, but at this point, they're different games. I love them both. I hope they do better. I hope more people experience them, and the SMT and Persona fan base grows as a whole. So I think that's good enough. We're gonna wrap it up here. I know Kong and Esoteric didn't really have any input for this podcast, but that's just this is not their thing. They don't really mesh with the it's not their cup of tea. It's not their genre, so to speak.
Well, it definitely was a very informative podcast in regards to both games. What I got most from it was that there are two sides of the same coin, but you should individualize them, so to speak. You know,
Hmm.
that's what I got overall from
Yeah,
it.
yeah. I mean, at this point, I would say they were the same coin. They're two different coins now. But
Okay,
they were both minted from the same forge, if we want to go for that analogy. But yeah.
that makes sense. I mean, they're both interesting games. I'm intrigued to actually play them. Will I have the time invested? Most likely not. But based off of what you guys, have spoken about, I can certainly see myself like looking into the game, especially someone who's driven by stories and whatnot. That's one of the things that I like about games. So, yeah, it was really informative, and hopefully, for those of the viewers that are listening, they keep an open eye to playing, both iterations of the game because they're
So
similar yet very
yeah,
different.
I, I would expect that anybody listening now, if they're interested, they would have already played Persona 5. I'm gonna plead the case that instead of criticizing SMT or Shin Megami Tensei 5 on the Nintendo Switch, instead of criticizing that game as being a quote unquote poor Persona clone, get that out of your mind and realize that you're playing something that is different from Persona, but will bring you some similarities or bring you some homage or nostalgia from the Persona series. Just
Right.
play the game, stay open minded, um, and don't let people who are going to say, oh, but this had this and this didn't have this, or this was better than this. Fuck all that. Like, let's forget
Yeah.
all that. Like,
Yeah.
enjoy the game
Yeah.
because they took their time to put it out here for us to enjoy, not for us to compare, the differences between a game that came out 5 years ago.
Right.
Blankakong, do you have anything? Because you cleared your throat.
I was
Do
coughing,
you have?
but
Oh,
I
sorry.
muted it for. No, it's fine.
Mm.
I muted it for the recording, but you guys said a lot of stuff.
A lot to unpack.
All I'll say is, if I were to play one of these games, I'd probably lean toward Shin Megami because of like the monster collecting sounds interesting. And there's no like dating or whatever. I was like, I have no interest in that. So and the
And
way you describe it, it sounds like it's kind of important to like the character building aspect of
it
Persona.
is. It is. It's an
So,
important.
it's
Do you
like
have to? Right. Do you
you
have
don't
to
have
date
to
the
do it per
character?
se,
Right.
but it's
Mm-hmm.
like behooves you to do it, like to get into it so that you have
Mm-hmm.
a better experience building up your personas and like your team or whatever of characters and
Right.
like that's I think the concept is really cool, but I don't really have an interest in delving into it personally. Yeah. It's just a
And
matter
that's
of like
fine. Yeah.
preference. But wow.
That's why both of them exist.
So I have one question though. I was gonna ask this earlier, but you guys were just on a train, and I was like, all right, I'll just
Let's not derail it.
yeah, I'll just I think I know the answer to it, but I'm gonna ask anyway. There is an overlap between the two worlds at all, is there?
No.
No.
Okay, cool.
So the only thing that you're gonna get that like we said earlier that overlaps is really in Persona, the monsters are called personas. In Shin Megami, they're called demons. Typically the the moves are the same. So electric moves are usually called Zeo. Fire moves are usually called Agi. That'll translate between the two of them on a one-to-one kind of scale. But other than that,
Yeah, but there's no like
the
persona
Shin
that
Megami.
makes an appearance in the Shin Megami game and vice versa, or characters that cross
No,
over.
then
That never
no,
happens.
there's no. Then that to my knowledge, anyways, that's never
No.
happened.
The only thing they share is, besides the what Wolf said about the spells and the
Terminology of the
yeah,
the spells
it's
or whatever. Yeah.
where they take place. They usually, because Japanese developed games, surprise, surprise, takes place in Japan. So that's
Yeah,
it.
but
That's
even
their
that's
similar.
not a crossover
No,
because it's two
like,
different universes or two different
yeah,
dimensions that exist. I guess they're
yeah.
not.
Persona is Persona Japan. SMT is SMT Japan.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Cool.
that's the way it works.
Well, that was your SMT versus Persona conversation podcast. I know anyone listening and not watching is probably confused. Yes, I was here the whole time. I was my job was to ask questions if I had any, and to record the podcast, and to end it. So here we are ending it. So every week we put up an episode on various gaming topics or nerd culture topics every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like. If you disliked it, dislike it. Comment down below and tell us what.
Fun fact: if you dislike the video, we won't be. Well, we can still see, but nobody else can still see.
That is true.
That's that will be a
So
thing. But
only thumbs up here, people.
but hit the dislike anyway, because I like to see the stats personally. But anyway, yeah, comment below. Let us know which like side you are on, if any. I'm not on either. So, but if I had to pick one, it'd probably be Shin Megami, based on what these guys talked about. And subscribe for more content. We also put out full streams. We do short reviews. Soon we'll be doing like other kinds of videos. We're just kind of figuring it out. So stay tuned for that. We also stream on Twitch. So I stream every now and again. I stream mostly retro indie games. Esoteric to my left, he streams more consistently Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Twitch every week. He usually streams action adventure games. Sometimes he'll stream multiplayer games like Splatoon or Fall Guys, things like that. So if you're interested in that kind of content, check him out. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So Esoteric, where can they find us on the socials?
Yes, just to let you guys know, I'm also here. But anyway, you guys can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Logical Gamers TV. Look for the light bulb icon, and you're there.
We also have a TikTok. By the time this comes out, there'll hopefully be decent content, so check us out there as well. Guys, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Appreciate the conversation and the knowledge. Guys, have a good night.
Take care.
Hey.
Good night.